With communists, that human was no longer selfish. In America today, that human is no longer born male or female. And obesity is not something that affects health. You can be healthy at any size. Really, we voted on it. A formerly serious magazine last year published with a straight face an article called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." Yes, it does. Because again, we haven't reinvented Homo sapiens since Crystal Pepsi came out. I've spent 3 decades on TV mocking Republicans who said climate change was just a theory. And now I got to deal with people who say, you know what else is just a theory? Biology.
Bill Maher is once again on the warpath, this time taking no prisoners in his crusade against woke culture. And let's be clear, he's not just poking fun, he's torching it. The unapologetic comedian, famous for roasting his own side as much as the opposition, just unleashed a verbal flamethrower that left the Democratic Party and the woke elite looking like they got caught in a 5-alarm blaze. Maher didn't hold back, calling out the delusions, tearing into the double standards, and yanking away that prized shield of self-righteousness the woke crowd hides behind. The result? Shockwaves ripping through Democratic circles, sparking a firestorm that no amount of cancel culture can smother. This isn't just comedy anymore. It feels like a reckoning. And Bill Maher is making sure everyone feels the heat.
If you're part of today's woke revolution, you need to study the part of revolutions where they spin out of control because the revolutionaries get so drunk on their own purifying elixir, they imagine they can reinvent the very nature of human beings. Communists thought selfishness could be cast out of human nature. Russian revolutionaries spoke of the new Soviet man who wasn't motivated by self-interest, but instead wanted to be part of a collective. No, it turns out he wanted to be on a yacht in a Gucci tracksuit holding a vodka and a prostitute. Not standing in line all day for a potato.
Maher wasted no time, going straight for the jugular, calling out what he says is the real sickness infecting the far left, their obsession with out-of-control woke policies. And he didn't sugarcoat a word of it. According to him, the left's fatal flaw is this constant urge to reinvent human beings, as if biology, common sense, and basic human nature can just be erased with a hashtag or rewritten in some policy memo. Maher argued that this endless attempt to force people into a utopian mold is exactly why they keep losing ground, because at the end of the day, people are still people. You can't legislate reality out of existence, no matter how many catchy slogans you chant. But time and time again, the woke crowd drinks their own Kool-Aid, blind to the backlash they're creating. And the result? Policies that collapse under the weight of their own delusion. Leaving the Democratic Party bleeding credibility, Maher didn't tiptoe around this. He lit the whole idea on fire and let it burn.
The problem with communism, and with some very recent ideologies here at home, is that they think you can change reality by screaming at it. That you can bend human nature by holding your breath. But that's the difference between reality and your mommy. Lincoln once said that you can repeal all past history, but you still cannot repeal human nature. But he's canceled now, so him.
And here's where Maher really digs in. Humans, he says, are way more complex than the far left ever gives them credit for. There's something genuinely worth celebrating about diversity, real diversity, not just the shallow, surface-level kind they obsess over, but the richness of our backgrounds, our bodies, and most importantly, the way we think. That's what makes humanity vibrant and unpredictable. But try telling that to the woke brigade. Instead of embracing differences in thought, they demand conformity. Step 1 inch outside their narrow script, and suddenly you're branded, shamed, and shoved into the cancel culture meat grinder. That's not tolerance. It's authoritarianism wrapped up in the shiny packaging of progress. They preach inclusivity, but the second you question their dogma, inclusivity gets tossed out the window. Maher points out the obvious. True diversity isn't everyone agreeing. It's people being able to disagree, debate, and still live side by side. But that's not what the woke crowd wants. They don't want dialogue. They want obedience. And when you refuse to kneel, they don't argue with you. They try to erase you.
Yesterday, I asked ChatGPT, are there any similarities between today's woke revolution and Chairman Mao's cultural revolution of the 1960s? And it wrote back, how long do you have? Because, again, in China, we saw how a revolutionary thought he could do a page-one rewrite of humans. Mao ordered his citizens to throw off the four olds. Old thinking, old culture, old customs, and old habits. So, your whole life went in the garbage overnight, no biggie. And those who resisted were attacked by an army of purifiers called the Red Guard, who went around the country putting dunce caps on people. Yeah, who didn't take to being a new kind of mortal being. A lot of pointing and shaming went on. Oh, and about 1 million dead. And the only way to survive was to plead insanity for the crime of being insufficiently radical, then apologize and thank the state for the chance to see what a piece of you are.
And then, of course, Maher went straight for the crown jewel of woke insanity, cancel culture. He ripped into it with both fists, mocking the left's obsession with silencing people instead of actually debating them. According to him, the new national pastime for woke warriors isn't fixing problems. It's hunting down anyone who dares step out of line and tossing them onto the digital pyre. One wrong word, one offbeat joke, or even some half-forgotten tweet from 10 years ago. And suddenly, you're branded a villain, unworthy of a job, a platform, or even a second chance. Maher didn't mince words here. He called it out for what it is, not progress, but pure regression. A childish, authoritarian impulse to destroy rather than persuade. He reminded everyone that societies don't move forward by punishing dissent. They advance by challenging ideas. But the woke mob doesn't want challenges. They don't want conversation. They want obedience. And if you don't bend the knee, they'll happily try to burn your career, your reputation, and your life online. Maher didn't just criticize cancel culture. He torched it. And he made sure everyone watching felt the flames.
Listen to this story. There's a law professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, named Jason Kilborn, whose crime was that on one of his exams, he used a hypothetical case where a black female worker sued her employer for race and gender discrimination, alleging that managers had called her 2 slur words, the type of real-world case these students might one day confront. And knowing the extreme sensitivity of today's students, he didn't write the 2 taboo words on the test, just the first letter of each. He was teaching his students how to fight racism in the place where it matters most, the criminal justice system. But because he merely alluded to those words, again in the service of a good cause, he was banned from campus, placed on indefinite leave, and made to wear the dunce cap.
I'll never forget Professor Kilburn's story because it sums up perfectly the madness we're living through right now. His university didn't just slap him on the wrist. No, they dragged him through 8 weeks of mandatory sensitivity training and even forced him to crank out 5 essays on self-reflection. And what was his crime? Speaking a simple truth, stating a basic fact about the real world. Think about that for a second. A man dared to say something real, and the woke establishment treated it like he'd committed blasphemy. This is the culture we're in, a culture so fragile, so hypersensitive, that one honest observation can trigger a full-blown bureaucratic inquisition. And it's not just confined to classrooms. That same suffocating pressure seeps into everyday life, forcing ordinary people to tiptoe through conversations like they're walking barefoot across broken glass, even in their own homes. Because the woke left isn't content with controlling public speech. They want to colonize private thought. That's not sensitivity, it's censorship. And make no mistake, it's chilling.
Yes, we do have our own Red Guard here, but they do their rampaging on Twitter. Here's a cute example from a couple of years ago. The banjo player from Mumford & Sons tweeted that he liked a book that apparently had not been approved by the revolution. So, of course, he had to delete the tweet, then take time away from the band. Oh my God, you mean this could have affected Mumford & Sons? And then the cringing apology, I have come to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. Pain? From a book? Unless he hit the drummer over the head with it.
The left's assault on Winston Marshall wasn't just over the line. It was downright disgraceful. Think about it. Here's a musician, a banjo player, not a politician, not a firebrand activist, who did nothing more than endorse a book by Andy Ngo. That's it. He didn't storm a stage, he didn't burn a flag, he didn't even crack a controversial joke. He tweeted about a book. But apparently, even that tiny flicker of independent thought was too much for the woke enforcers to tolerate. They came for him with the kind of venom you'd expect them to reserve for actual criminals, demanding punishment until he bowed his head. And under the crushing weight of the mob, Marshall was forced to step away from his band and issue a humiliating apology. That wasn't justice. It was bullying, plain and simple. The left loves to claim they're champions of free expression, but the second someone strays from their carefully written script, the torches come out. Winston Marshall's only crime was curiosity, and for that, the woke mob tried to destroy him.
There was once a very different musician named John Lennon who wrote a song called Revolution. And people who didn't really listen to it thought it was a rah-rah call for revolution. No, it was the opposite. The lyrics are, you say you want a revolution? Well, you know, we all want to change the world. But if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anybody anyhow. There's a guy who understood how good intentions can turn into the insane arrogance of thinking your revolution is so fucking awesome and your generation is so mind-bendingly improved that you have bequeathed the world with a new kind of human. You're welcome.
And this right here is the heart of the problem. The woke left truly believes they are the most advanced, most enlightened, most morally superior beings on the planet. In their minds, they've evolved beyond the rest of us mere mortals, which means, of course, it's their sacred duty to dictate how we think, how we act, and how we live. They've crowned themselves the referees of morality, the arbiters of taste, and the self-appointed guardians of truth. According to them, they get to decide which opinions are acceptable, which songs you're allowed to enjoy, which comedians you're permitted to laugh at, and even which books you're safe to read. Step outside their carefully fenced orthodoxy, and suddenly you're branded ignorant, hateful, or worse. But here's the punchline. The irony in all of this. For all their lofty proclamations, most of it collapses under the weight of plain old common sense. They don't make society freer or smarter. They make it more fragile, less tolerant, and completely disconnected from reality.
With communists, that human was no longer selfish. In America today, that human is no longer born male or female. And obesity is not something that affects health. You can be healthy at any size. Really, we voted on it.
We all saw the train wreck that came out of the anti-common sense slogan. You can be healthy at any weight. Sure, It sounded empowering on social media, but reality had other plans. Obesity isn't some small side issue. It's tied directly to heart disease, diabetes, strokes, and according to the CDC, it contributes to nearly 300,000 American deaths every single year. That's not fat shaming. That's not an opinion. That's cold, hard fact. And yet, the woke crowd pushed this narrative anyway, shaming doctors, silencing critics, and acting as if biology could just be rebranded with a catchy hashtag. The tragic fallout? People who desperately needed honest medical guidance were handed false comfort instead, and lives were lost in the process. And once the evidence became impossible to ignore, the woke mob didn't apologize, didn't reflect, didn't take responsibility. They just abandoned that sinking ship and sprinted to their next crusade, ready to infest another corner of culture with their delusions. The pattern never changes. Deny reality, wreak havoc, then run.
A formerly serious magazine last year published with a straight face an article called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." Yes, it does. Because again, we haven't reinvented Homo sapiens since Crystal Pepsi came out. I've spent 3 decades on TV mocking Republicans who said climate change was just a theory, and now I got to deal with people who say, you know what else is just a theory? Biology.
It's almost laughable when you stop and look at the kind of debates dominating headlines today. We're living in an age of rapid technological breakthroughs, artificial intelligence reshaping entire industries, biotechnology rewriting the future of medicine, space exploration pushing us closer to the stars. These should be the conversations leading us forward. Big picture debates about how to balance innovation with ethics, how to prepare workers for a shifting economy, how to harness technology without destroying privacy or freedom. That's the level we should be operating on. But instead, what does the woke crowd want us stuck on? Endless debates over gender and sex, basic biology that humanity has understood for thousands of years. Instead of advancing society, they drag it backward, obsessing over pronouns, redefining words, and enforcing ideological conformity on issues that should be rooted in science and common sense. That's not progress. That's a distraction. And while they're busy arguing over what the word woman means, the rest of the world is racing ahead. This is the left's warped priority list in action. And it's exactly why Bill Maher's war with woke culture isn't just comedy. It feels like survival. He's exposing a movement that cancels musicians for reading books, bullies professors for speaking simple truths, and preaches healthy at any size, while ignoring the very real deaths linked to obesity. A movement that claims tolerance while silencing diversity of thought, pretends biology is up for debate, and demands blind obedience over truth. Maher is simply saying what millions of people already know deep down. The woke left has completely lost touch with reality.